We saw a mostly positive outlook in September and early October from the 12 Federal Reserve District business contacts. We saw a modest to moderate pace of expansion. Wage growth was reported as being modest across most districts, and labor markets remain tight. We saw price growth characterized as mild, and the housing expanded in most districts, although we saw some housing constraints as we saw less inventory in many districts.
So as we're looking here, is there a big takeaway, Gina? Is there something that jumps out to you that's particularly new or different?
You know, I think the big takeaway here is that what we generally saw is just an anecdotal representation of what the Fed has been dealing with all year. You know, we're seeing some modest wage pressures, we're seeing a little bit of a pickup in the labor market, but generally conditions in the labor market remain tight, and inflation has still been slow to accelerate. So I think this just really confirmed what they've been seeing all year.
And Gina, there are a couple of Fed officials that spoke today. We had Williams speaking in New Jersey, Kaplan speaking in Texas, right as the Fed was getting ready to prepare the Beige Book. Fold in their comments and how it matches or strays from what we learned in the Beige Book.
You know, I think looking at Fed officials' comments more generally over the last couple of weeks, we really see a solid match between what they're saying and what we're seeing in this Beige Book. So I think the big takeaways from this Beige Book are we have pretty tight labor markets, but we're still waiting on inflation. And I think that's what Fed officials have been telling us. You know, they've been broadly saying we're seeing a really solid labor market. You know, we might want to test the limits on how far we can go there as we try and get inflation back up to our 2% target.
Right, that's certainly a debate that's brewing within the Fed. What about the election? Was there any mention of uncertainty related to the upcoming election and how that might be holding back some businesses or consumers?
We did see that. So the commercial real estate contacts did report some worries about uncertainty related to the presidential election. What we didn't see was a broader mention of that, and that was a bit of a surprise to us. But, you know, in commercial real estate, that clearly is a concern.
Gina, the conversation, I think, out of the Fed minutes and really the past couple months here has been about rethinking inflation and what sort of metrics they need to target. Is there anything from the Beige Book in terms of the economic data, anything that's going on in the U.S. that might advance that conversation at all?
You know, I think what is interesting is we did see in this Beige Book mentions that we're seeing only slight, you know, very, very gradual increases in inflation, but we are seeing some signs of wages picking up, which I think is what a lot of people at the Fed have been waiting to see. You know, can we get the labor market to a point where we're going to push wages up, and eventually will that lead into inflation? And so I think these anecdotes sort of feed into that discussion that the Fed is having more broadly.